So Karla has this story about when she was a kid and she wanted were they yellow rain boots?
Yes, they were
The
yellow.
yellow rain boots. And her dad would not let her buy the yellow rain boots. She's a kid. Now mind you, kids should want yellow rain boots. But he talked her into getting the gray ones because the gray ones were more practical and would last longer and go with more things. So she very much grew up off of different kinds of principles than I grew up with. And this all came to a head in our marriage because I came into our marriage with that mindset. And so I was spending money and Karla was preserving money. It all came to a head one day when I decide, Karla's at work, I'm pastoring, so I'm working from home that particular day, and I gets up off the couch. So we had one car. We lived in the South Loop in a like condo tower. We were renting a condo there, and we had one parking space, one car. That's all we needed. We lived at 13th and Prairie in Chicago. We only needed one car. We had one car. It was paid for. I gets up in the middle of the day, and I go out to the suburbs to a dealership, and Karla wanted a Lexus RX 350 SUV. I go out there, I look at this RX 350, and I decide, I don't know what in my like 28-year-old mind made me think that it was a great idea, 28, 29-year-old mind, that I'm gonna buy the car for Karla. Now, quote unquote buy, right? Because it's dead, right? And so I go there, I spot the car, I get the car. I'm like, she's gonna love this. She's gonna love me for this, right? And there is also a BMW 745, and y'all need to understand that I always wanted a BMW 745. And the unscrupulous salesperson tells me that, well, you know, the finance company won't know you bought one car if you buy two cars, right? Because there isn't enough time for the second one to show up on your credit. I'm 28, 29. I didn't know any better. And so I left the car dealership with two cars. One body, two cars. I drove a car there, but now I have two more cars and I have one body. So then I have to call some friends, some more co-conspirators, to come help me drive all these cars home. We have one parking spot in the South Loop in our building, and I have three cars now.
And somehow we're still married. Thank the Lord. Thank the Lord.
So $50,000 worth of debt I bring home, and somehow our marriage managed through that. I appreciate Karla for her grace. And I remember one day, speeding this up, I remember one day going shopping on North Michigan Avenue. I remember parking on Chicago Avenue and like Michigan Avenue, parking that BMW 745, going into Bank of America because it's the last day to pay the credit card bill before I get hit with a late fee. And so I go in there trying to do the responsible thing before shopping, going in to pay the bill, right? And I realized when I walked out of there that I just paid the minimum on this credit card again. And I started thinking about how many months have I been going in here paying this minimum payment of about $300 on this credit card. And here I am about to go shopping to spend more money than that. That's how warped my mindset was at the time. And as I'm shopping, I have this horrible knot in my stomach that this ain't it, that something is off. I just slammed the door of a BMW 745 to walk into Bank of America to pay the minimum on the credit card 3 hours before the deadline. And here I am out here shopping. And all of a sudden I felt less rich, less wealthy. All the imaginations I had in my mind about like who I was, all that stuff started to crumble, and I realized who I really was. I was a person deep in debt, making bad financial decisions, and really had no path, no way of getting out. And so I came home that night, and it felt to me as if I had gone to a revival and gotten saved and was coming home to tell my wife I got religion, because I came home and I effectively said to Karla, I get it. And I think she had been waiting for a long time for me to get there. And so we picked up a book that we had that I had not really read before. It was called Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. And we read that book together, headed to Milwaukee to her mom's house for the holiday. She became like the audiobook. You were like an early audiobook. Read that book out loud as we drove up there. And there was a point in the book where Dave mentions, he does the math on what it looks like if you purchased the car cash and invested what you would have paid for car note. He had some math in there about what that looks like after 10 years, what that looks like after 20 years, and the amount of money was huge. And I said, I want that. Like, that's true wealth. And so that started us on a totally different journey, and ultimately that journey ended in us paying off all of our debt. It caused me to have to sell the coveted BMW 745. We also sold that car that we had already had before, the Lexus. We sold that one to pay off some debt. We ultimately paid off that Lexus and paid off all of our other debt. And we kept that car for a long time. And ultimately where it all ended, or where it lands now, is not only have we been able to pay off debt, we've been able to invest money in the stock market, max out our 401ks. We've been able to purchase real estate, investment property, flipping property, rental property, and been able to build high net worth over that shift in mindset, and then putting in place some principles that Karla is going to talk about in just a moment. So a little bit of setup, and then I'm going to get out of the way, and Karla is going to tell us where we're going. But let's look at Romans chapter 12, verse 2. I'll read this verse to you guys quickly. It says, "Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think." And so today is going to be a lot about a change in mindset. If you didn't come today to change mindset, or if you came today with the goal of doing better with your money, but you didn't come with the desire or openness to change your mindset, it's going to be limited in terms of how far you can go. And so 4 things that we'll focus on today in terms of strategy. Those 4 strategies are simply this. Karla's going to talk a bit about recognizing that mindset matters. We're going to talk a bit about having a plan for your money. Number 3, we're going to talk about being intentional about what you pay off, about how you pay off your debt, I should say. And then number 4, so we're at 4 strategies for debt freedom. Number 4, we're going to talk about how to make plans for wealth and legacy. So we'll spend a few minutes on each of these, and I'll pass it off to Karla.
Yeah, so I let him tell that story because, every once in a while I still have to pray my strength in the Lord as I think about some of it. But I think the takeaway there is everyone has a story, right? And I think he started off by saying that, we are not superheroes in any way, shape, or fashion. And we, in some cases, probably started in worse cases than a lot of folks. And so the fact that we can have evolved and grown, through the help of the Holy Spirit and a lot of hard work means that is possible for anybody and everybody. And so that is why we're so passionate about this space of talking about, how to take back control of your finances, because it can control your life otherwise. And so, to his point, it starts really in this space of mindset. And if we don't start with the mind, as the Bible says, nothing else will come after it. And so there's a few things that we think about as it relates to what it takes to actually make some of those shifts. So if you move forward just 2 slides, we'll get to one of the first places that we think about for mindset shifts. So I think there's actually a scripture right after. So we talk about this in breaking patterns, and there are a few patterns that we talk about breaking, and it's a lot of what sets our mindset is set by our culture and our community. And community means just the people that you are in community with, however that is. We all are familiar with this idea of keeping up with the Joneses, right? Hey, if, so-and-so across the street got to do this, what does that mean for what my success looks like? We take for granted how much that can drive how and why we decide to make purchases, why we decide to take certain vacations, why we decide to put our kids in certain places, why we decide to buy certain cars, certain clothing. And I think this is a place where, when we are honest with ourselves, we can recognize that that can play a major part in how we decide what success looks like. And we know that God has a different picture for success for all of us, but that is where the renewal of the mind comes in, is so important. So we talk a lot about like needing to acknowledge when things are about how our community is pushing us to show up in different ways, and what we need to do about that. When we were on our journey, and you'll hear more about like how we had to, hardcore go into getting rid of this debt, we got to a place where we were real comfortable telling everybody in our group we were broke. We'd be like, sorry, can't go to that party, I'm broke. Can't go to that dinner because I'm broke, right? Like, we got to a place where we had to be comfortable with our truth, because our current truth would impact our reality into the future if we didn't change it. So, hey, let's talk about I'm broke, because you probably broke too, and you're just not talking about it. Let's be real, right? So that's definitely one of those major patterns that we've talked about that you have to break. I think the next one that you go on to is, and it's different for the different age groups and the different generations, but there is this piece about like how you show up in the world. And that, again, when we talk about like the pushback off of the mentalities there, so much of the things that we do are about like who we can tell and what we're doing. We talk often, especially in groups that we're around, this idea of doing it for the gram. It means like, I'm going to go on this trip so I can get a really good picture and let other people think that I have lived this life, right? There are so many dresses that I've worn to events that I'm like, where I posted that on Instagram, I can't wear this dress again, right? Like, there's just some of these things that we start to create in our minds that actually put us in boxes, because we're allowing what others think or what we're doing in service of others to actually dictate, and that's costly. That's very costly. And so again, even back to this thought of like, when you put yourself in the mentality of I'm doing this for something bigger than those that are around me, or even in long term in service of being able to support those around me in a different way, it challenges some of those behaviors and helps you to think past them.
Absolutely. And then thirdly, it is what can sometimes function as affirmation through acquisition. So sometimes it's not about the external benefits of purchasing things, of spending money. It actually is about what that's doing for us internally. It makes us feel better about ourselves because we went out and shopped. They call it retail therapy, is what it's often referred to as. This is a way for me to stop feeling down about myself, or this is a way for me to feel good about myself because of the thing that I bought. But sometimes that purchase is fighting against our other goals of being able to build wealth or pay off debt or being able to be generous toward things that are important to us. And then fourthly, we have to break the pattern of taking on unnecessary debt. And sometimes it's the very simple and mundane ways that it happens. You know how we're at the checkout counter and we're perfectly ready to pay for the stuff, and then they ask us if we want to save 20% by opening up a store card. And like, no, like, you don't need a Hobby Lobby store card. You don't need a Marshall's, a TJ Maxx store card, but they just put that 20% out there, and now we have this unnecessary debt. And so those are some of the patterns that we need to break.
Yeah, and actually even to that one, like sometimes we take on debt because we actually think we're helping, right? So we were even talking about this with folks that we know taking on, and we might start stepping on toes around the way, but like taking on debt for others in our families because we love them, right? There are things like that we do that come out of a generous heart, but can also shackle us in further. And so it's just really being able to challenge how we think about, especially when it comes to credit, what that means for your ability to do other things in your life, and how important you create a safeguard around how you use your credit and how you build additional debt. So again, I think this is the takeaway here, is at the end of the day, we are all stewarding God's money, right? There are so many the stories in the Bible about what have you done with what I have given you. If I can't trust you with a little, I cannot give you more, right? If I give you a certain amount of talents and you go and bury it, you are not going to get blessed, right, above and beyond. And so there's time and time again this idea of ensuring that we see this as a steward of something else and not just ours to do what we want. And so how does that change the way that we show up for it? So if we go on to the next part, we call it a money plan because what we have realized is even though it is not a 4-letter word, people use it like a 4-letter word, and it is budget. Nobody likes the word budget. But at the end of the day, if you do not have a plan for your money will run away from you. I remember Demetrius talking about way back when he was a teacher. Actually, he was doing student teaching, I think it was, early on for middle schoolers. And he showed up, and it was like right before school started, and all the kids had to come into, I guess it was the cafeteria, and it was a hot mess. Kids running around. You had the teacher in there just being like, Jerome, sit down, right? Like there was no plan for how that space was going, and it was chaos. And honestly, that is what happens when your money does not have a plan for it, right? If you don't tell your money where to go, meaning I know how much I bring in, I know how much the things are that I spend, and I know then what I can save and what I can put towards debt, you will never get out of debt. And that is one of those like not sexy things that is so core to what we learned about our story and what we want to empower you all with today is that first one. Actually, if you go on to the next page, we start to talk about, and this is a great one too, where we talk about Proverbs 13 and 16, right? A wise man thinks ahead, a fool doesn't and even brags about it. It's that idea that like you have to be planful in service of actually getting the most out of your money, right? And that is what the Lord will reward. So when you go to the next slide, I think that's where it starts to talk about like some of these budgeting essentials. If you don't like budget, like we say, call it a money plan, call it whatever you want to, but these are the core things that we learned across the journey and that have continued to show up well in our life. And it is that first one that you will not get out of debt without a budget. If you do not know how much you are spending and how much is left to go towards debt, and you can consistently put that against debt, you will never be able to pay it off. You will never get ahead of it enough to actually pay it off. And so it is so essential to really make sure that you understand that. Knowing and owning your money management pitfalls. So in another talk that we do like the 10 things that typically throws people off of budgets. And some of it is like recognizing for those of us that have these reoccurring charges, I swear Netflix is gonna be the death of us one of these days. Cause like all the ongoing charges, all of the DoorDash, all of the I set something up 10 years ago and I didn't even remember. See, somebody felt. You saw scene. Somebody seen right up in there. I get it. These are the things that will creep up and that you don't pay attention to and somehow you're like, what happened? I had money. Yes, it went to all of these reoccurring charges that we forget are on there, right? Like there's just some of these pitfalls that we find into. Some of what he was saying, like the retail therapy, right? Like, what do you do when you're upset? Do you go out to eat a lot, right? Do you go buy a new pair of shoes, right? Like, there's those things that being mindful of where you might not be doing well with your money, or your budget might only have essentials in it. You're not actually accounting for how often you buy coffee, or how your Walmart trips that are just like, oh, I forgot trips that snip up on you. See, somebody's feeling that one too. But I think these are the things that we've learned that you want to make sure that you do, and it's some helpful things that you can do to start to do that. When we first started on our debt management plan, and for those that have read Total Money Makeover, but there's also a newer book that we love by Tiffany Aliche, and it's called Get Good with Money. Hers is more recent. It's got a lot more up-to-date kind of ways to think about things as well. So Get Good with Money by Tiffany Aliche, A-L-I-C-H-E. What it talks about is ensuring that all your money can't play together, right? Like we got really good about creating this account is for gas and groceries, and there's only an X amount of money in it. So guess what? When that one is down to $10, you got $10 more to spend on it, or you're going to go up to this counter and you're going to get embarrassed, right? Like, we had to start instilling disciplines into it. If you have a bank account with a place like Chase or Bank of America, you can get multiple accounts. You can see them all, but that means you can also delineate what money goes into which account, and you've essentially created micro budgets within your budget. It is a highly effective way to help make sure that you don't touch money that you're not supposed to for endeavors, right? Like, bill money should not be going out to, the mall with you. That should be in another place, right? Definitely when you start to talk about, like, once you build, like, you've got your account for your bills, you've got one for your gas and grocery, we even made an entertainment account, right? There's a certain amount in there. We also even outlined for ourselves what we call discretionary. That was our, like, money we could just play with, right? And so, because again, you don't want to feel like you're over restricted. Just like a diet, like, if you over restrict how you show up or what you can spend, you're never going to stay to that. You have to give yourself a way to feel like you're making choices versus you're only being restricted. And so we gave ourselves an account that this is how much you have discretionary. Do with what you will, right? And that gives you your way to play and feel like you are, you're able to still use your money the way you want while you're also using the money the way you need to. I think the last thing on here is just sometimes we had to pressure ourselves, and even as we continue to look at our budgets back and forth, what our needs really and what our wants, right? Like, do we need to actually have 12 different streaming services, right? Which is what ends up happening in our house, right? There's those kinds of things that we continue to have to push ourselves on. So I think if you go to the next one, we'll just kind of hit on a couple of resources as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Take advantage of technology to help you on this journey. So here's some just some resources that we have used along the way that have benefited us. Mint.com is a great way to be able to connect to a platform that can go in and even identify for you how are you budgeting your money right now. Even if you aren't technically budgeting, it'll break down for you. Like, this is how much you spend on food. This is how much you spend on dining out. This is how much you spend on subscription services. And so Mint.com is great for that. There are also some others that you can leverage. And nowadays, even in some banking platforms, those things are available as well. DaveRamsey.com is another one. I especially enjoy leveraging Dave, whether it's for the budgeting resources or, which I think is also important, in helping us understand, like, where we need to be headed to be prepared for retirement or for the remainder of retirement for those that already are. And then nerdwallet.com is another great resource.
So the next piece we'll go into, just to hit at a high level, because this really gets into, like, so how do you practically start to pay off debt? Like, how did we approach it? So some of this might be familiar to you all. If you've ever been down the path of it, if you go to the next page, I think there's a scripture that just kind of talks to, right, like, don't run them up a debt. The only debt we are to have is to love one another, right? So how do we get really, really maniacal about paying off and staying as debt-free as possible? So next page gets to what fundamentally are talked about as, like, the two main ways that people tackle debt. If anybody has seen anything about this snowball or avalanche, does it sound familiar? Yeah, so if anyone's been on this journey of really trying to attack their debt, you typically hear this, right? Like, there's the snowball approach to tackling debt, and there's the avalanche. Snowball is exactly that. Like, as you think about how you create a snowball, you usually start with a small amount of snow, and you keep rolling and rolling and rolling, and that snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So that is really the way that one typically is approached. Avalanche is about, like, starting from a very large, looking at things from what is costing you the most and attacking that first. So snowball is really this idea that, like, hey, when you start to think about your all of your debts, how do you put them in the smallest of debt to the biggest and work your way that way? Avalanche is start from your biggest debt and work your way down to the smallest. There are folks that advocate in every direction on which one to approach. we actually took, if you go to the next slide, we took the snowball effect. And the quick reason why we liked the idea of the quick hits, right? Like if you can attack something and remove it quickly, you get like the motivation, right? Like the more you can quickly hit things, the more you feel like, okay, I'm making progress, so I will keep going. So that is the way we did it. We literally wrote down every debt that we had. We even included like money we owed to family members, all of that. We put it on a list. For those that had a monthly payment, we took everything down to minimum payment. And what I'm saying on this one is we often go with the spray and pray attack, is the way I say. It's like, I'm gonna put a little bit on this, I'm gonna put a little bit on that, I'm gonna put a little bit on this. But that actually is not creating the most focused attention against each debt. So what you would typically do, as it says here, is right, like you start to list them, you take everything down except for the debt that you are addressing down to its minimum payment. So then if you were paying, let's say $200 towards a credit card whose minimum payment was only $80, right? Like you take that extra $120 and now you put that against the debt that you're focused on. It's all about being laser focused on the debt that you are focused on, so that the most money you can go against that one to then get rid of it. Because once you've gotten rid of that, you take the money that you were putting against that, along with the minimum balance that you no longer owe against that one, on to the next. And if you keep rolling, you keep having more and more money to actually put against these debts. Like, you'll be surprised how quickly and how impactful that can be when you allow it to really focus. The other thing that we did around that is if you are in a big place of debt to pay off, we tend to have very large amounts of money or if we have money sitting, some of that money can be working harder for you to put it against the debt, right? Like, because debts will cost you 24% on the interest, right? Like it's costing you money to keep. Even if you have a little, savings account, you're not making anything off of just sitting there. You don't want to have any emergency funds because you don't want to go to credit cards if you need to, fix your car or something. So you want to have at least some, but there actually is a value of using money, if you have access to it, to pay down the debts first. Because what you will find is you'll be like, where did all this extra money come from in my account all of a sudden? And it's because when you don't have these debts to pay, and when you're getting that much more focused, you have access to more money than we sometimes give ourselves credit for. And so that was the most assuring and just really honestly amazing thing for us to learn. And we have my mom, actually, I've been working with her on paying off things and helping her to set different boundaries on how much she's spending. And it's amazing once you can start to see the momentum when you start to paying down the debts. I think we can go to the next page, and I'm just going to hit this at a high level and really only hit the one at the bottom. Either way you go, you are going to run into paying off debt is hard, right? And sometimes it can take a while. So make sure you are celebrating along the way, right? You pay off a debt. Maybe that next month you take a piece of what you would have been putting in your snowball and you take yourself to a nice dinner. Or you do something that says, I see that I am making the hard work and I am doing this, and I need to congratulate myself, because you do need ways to stay motivated. That $125,000 we paid off in 2 years, which sounds crazy, but when you are crazy about changing your life, you can do amazing things with the help of God, right? And so that is why we know that this is possible, because we have done it.
Awesome. And so let's talk finally about making moves. So once we've gotten onto the other side of actually being able to pay off debt, what do we do with the money that we have now left over? The snowball doesn't melt. It doesn't go away magically. But now that money, that snowball that we used to leverage to pay other people, now we can begin to use it to pay ourselves. Now we can begin to use it to build a legacy, which is what this weekend is all about. Proverbs 13:22, it says, a good person leaves an inheritance to their children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. So that's the goal. It is, how do we ensure that the next generation is set up in a much better place than perhaps what some of us were set up for. So let's talk a bit about wealth building and kind of what that journey looks like, and then we'll go into some Q&A. So the first thing that you want to do is save up. After you've paid off debt, you want to save up 6 months of living expenses. So on our journey, we reduced our savings down significantly. That's the path that we took. But once the debt's paid off, now we need to get our savings back up again, and we want to ideally get it up to 6 months of living expenses. We started out at 3 months. We're able to get it up to there, but then ultimately the goal again was getting it up to 6 months. When you have that, that can help you weather a job loss. That can help you weather other challenging situations that can come up in life, and you can find yourself not needing to tap debt anymore to deal with life's emergencies. The next step is maxing out your 401k, or for those that work in the nonprofit space, 403b, whatever that retirement vehicle is. So maxing out means what's that maximum amount that the government allows me to contribute toward my retirement based on their stipulations for the year, as well as impact related to my age. At a certain age, you're allowed to also include a bit more into your 401k and 403b. And then from there, it's important to follow the steps, right? These aren't the sexiest things. They aren't the most attractive things, but following the steps is super important. So from there, you start exploring the cash flowing investments, the things like real estate. So for some people, they want to own investment property, and that's certainly a place that you can begin doing after you cover some of these other things. All right, let's go on to the next one. This was really important to us, so investing in the 529 college savings plan for our child. We also took another approach to saving for our child's education. So we bought an investment property. It's in our school district, but it's in the next town over, so same school. And we call it, our daughter's name is Layla, we call it the Layla House. And so what this house is meant to do is serve as a rental that we bought with a 30-year mortgage. I think interest rates were only about 4% at the time. So we got this investment property, and it's in a great school district, so we know that it'll maintain its value and it'll continue to increase in value, but we pay it off on a 15-year schedule. So we bought the house when she was around 5 years old, something like that, 5 or 6 years old, and the goal is by the time it's time for her to go to college, that house is pretty much paid off. So if nothing else happens, we know that when it's time for her to go to college, we could sell this house and then leverage that to pay for college. Or we could refinance that house, pull that money out, use that to pay for college, and then let the rent on that house continue to pay back that new loan from the refinance. She can manage that as her first investment property when she graduates college. So that was a way that we kind of connected both the need to save for college along with our desire to invest in more real estate. And then there are things like IRAs and mutual funds, whether it's for yourself or for your children or grandchildren. We do this thing for our nieces and nephews where whenever a new niece or nephew is born, we set up an account for them and we just deposit a certain amount of money every month that's being invested for them. And then when they graduate high school, we give them this check that's for them. So we've been able to do that for a few nieces and nephews since we got out of debt. And the last one is radical generosity, right? And I just want to say this is one of the key places where things can tend to function differently for the Black church. It is in this particular part here about the radical generosity part. When we've begun to pivot ourselves from a place of debt into a place individually into a place of wealth building, we can then be more radical when it comes to our generosity. We can participate more in the things that give us joy, that give us life, that end up pouring life into us. We've got money to invest there. We've got money to leave behind, right? When we pass on, we've got money to leave behind that we can invest in the next generation. That will be the next generation of leaders in our churches, in our beloved organizations and institutions in our community. And so that's a place that I absolutely want to see us continue to strive toward getting to. And so here's my remix, finally, of Romans chapter 12 that we started out with. This is what that remix looks like. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, like taking on unnecessary debt, buying things just to impress people, living at or above your means, and spending to affirm who you are. Instead, let God transform how you handle money by changing the way you think. Then you will learn God's will for your finances, which is good, pleasing, and perfect. And so we want to open up now for some time. I think we have like 15 minutes, about 15 more minutes. Open up some time for just Q&A and start exploring how we can kind of impact you guys, specifically related to like your questions, the place you are on your journey. All right. I think they have a question from the back. You want us to, Pastor Martin, should we go up? We can stay here? Okay.
How has freeing up debt helped you guys contribute to the kingdom?
So, I mean, multiple ways we could start with. So, again, because we have extra access to cash, we have been able to give so generously to our church. We are in a church building because we were essentially, as a family, able to pay a down payment on it. I also have been in corporate America for a very long time, and I'm actually stepping more into a ministry role. One, because we've been able to set up our finances such that we don't need my corporate income at the level that we did before, and so it gives me a chance to work in full-time ministry now and at a different pace because we've been able to set up our future appropriately to give us that flexibility.
That's an excellent question. Yeah, if you've got a question, you can either come to the mic or we can move the mic around to where you are if you prefer to hold your seat.
I have a question in relations to, as you were talking about the 401k and different things of that nature. So I'm not real familiar with investing, 401ks, different things like that. So how do someone such as myself gather that kind of information to pass on to younger generations, family, young people?
That's an excellent question. Thank you. So there are a few kinds of financial advisors. I believe Newmark, you guys have financial advisors. Like I would say for those who are interested in stepping into that space, like have that conversation with people who like do this for a living, related to investments that can. So one of the things that I know financial advisors will do is they'll do like a risk tolerance survey. So it's one thing for us to think like what our risk tolerance is, but then that questionnaire helps identify what your real risk tolerance is. And then once that's identified, they can start talking about like, this is the kind of portfolio we would advise you to have. You should have, like our advisor said, we should have a 60% stock, 40% bond allocation based on our risk profile. I thought I had a high risk tolerance, but the test tells the truth, and I don't have the stomach for that big of a loss. So I would say start there.
Yeah, and actually I would say, especially for 401ks, like most companies offer it, right? Like you don't actually have to go anywhere other than starting with what your company offers. And what they would typically do is they give you a percentage of your income that you can put against it. And in most cases as well, they will even match it. So let's say that before tax, you decide you want to put 5% of your check against it. Some companies will put another 2% against it. So right off the bat, you're getting 7% of your paycheck against your 401k, and that's tax-free on the front end. So I think that that's something also is like, if you have children or kids that work in corporate or work in many companies full-time, they should be making sure they know what the 401k is at their company and putting as much as they can once they've, started working through debts and all of that, just directly into that. And it comes out of your check before you even see it, so you don't even have to manage for it on the front end, right? Like, it's already taken care of.
It's free money. It's free money that we're passing up when we
And
don't.
actually, because you put it there, it lowers your tax base sometimes too, because that money isn't counted in how much you get taxed in your day-to-day. So there's just a lot of benefit to just starting with that. If your company offers it, get a 401, use your 401k or your 403b if you're in education or some of the other institutions.
I have a question regarding the transition.
Oh, I'm sorry. They're trying to catch you on camera too. If you wouldn't mind
and
coming
that's
to the
why I
mic.
sat right
I'm
here.
sorry.
I don't want to be seen.
I was like,
They're gonna bring the gimbal over to you like this. Now that you said it.
that part. There you go, right?
you talked about being in corporate, and that was my story. And moved into now a small business. And so I think we were doing everything right until I took us left. And so any tools, any resources to speak to, okay, the comfortability of knowing that your checks are coming, to, oh, okay, this is how it works when some people want to pay and you're chasing your money, et cetera, et cetera. So any advice, any ways not to pull out your hair, that kind of thing? That
Exactly.
you
Yeah,
can
so
speak
it's
to?
it's such a great point. And we actually, one of the things that we talked about, and another thing too, is like when people are going through budgeting, recognizing that some people are gig workers or entrepreneurs, right, where there isn't necessarily every month it's the exact same thing. I will say, in those cases, first and foremost, is you have to be even more maniacal about your money plan, right? Like knowing what are your monthly expenses pretty consistently, because you also have to manage for the up and down months, right? So you have to know, I made 10 grand this month, our monthly expenses are 7. Some months I only bring 5, so I need to hold that other 3, you know what I'm saying, for this kind of thing. So that is what we've often had to tell folks, is look at what is the average. Now that you're starting to do it regularly, what's the average of what you bring in? And then how do you have to think about what your expenses are in relation to the average and not the high, right? And not even the low. Because if you start to like manage for the middle, your budget will actually help you manage for it as well. So that is what we've definitely seen in most cases, is get to what that average is of what the income is, bake your money plan on that. And it'll give you the space to, as you ebb and flow, to work through some of those ebb and flows more, without pulling out all those pretty braids. Exactly. Yeah. I was gonna say, sorry, we can bring it over to you. Want to do that? Made you'd have to walk over. Oh, the camera's over here, so I think they need you over there. Sorry.
I got a question on infinite banking, IUL, or what they call it, infinite banking, like they do on speak on the AC Green show. And I understand how the 401k works. And some instances, sometimes if the stock market goes down, your 401k goes down. But the infinite banking, they say how it stays the same. Are you familiar with that or anything of that nature?
I'm not familiar with that, with infinite banking. This is the first time. I'll certainly look into it, but it's the first time I've heard about it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I have not heard, and I will say for most of the things that I look at, that does not show up as your most viable ones typically are a 401k, because yes, it does have the the market dynamics.
Fluctuation.
But at the end of the day, everything does. So I would just probably,
Okay.
you know, be sure of kind of a foundation in some things that are just foundational to the market.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, all investments are going to have volatility. Pretty much all investments are going to have volatility. The guaranteed stuff, those are things like certificates of deposit at FDIC insured institutions. If they're not FDIC insured, it's not guaranteed. It's a high likelihood that you'll get it. But if it's not FDIC insured, it's not 100% guaranteed, meaning that like if the institution fails, the government steps in with its insurance and covers all those depositors. Those are like kind of your only guaranteed pieces where you won't have the fluctuation of the market. While she's coming over, I just want to emphasize something Karla mentioned. Protect your credit. We were talking to somebody earlier this week who co-signed for some somebodies and is dealing with the fallout of that. Protect your credit. If the banks won't lend them money and they do this professionally, like if the bank said no, you should say no. There is a reason why they said they will lend money to almost anybody. Like if they were like, nah, it's a nah for you. If you can't afford to give them some money to help them, then that's it. But don't lend. There is only thing more precious than your credit is like your body and your soul. But I think number 3 is like your credit. You have to protect that.
So I'm a stay-at-home mom. So we're on a single income. So I feel like my mind wants to be aggressive towards the debts and things like that. My husband's mindset, I'm trying to reel him in with that more, but we're not big spenders. You know, we have to definitely be careful of what we do, but we haven't been like real good about budgeting. But also I've been like on this journey. I feel like God wants me to go into entrepreneurship. I do want to create multiple streams of income, but I want income where it's not like doing some gig work, where I want actual real income. So what are some streams of income that you guys possibly did to help pay off your debt?
So before I even go to that, I think it is so surprising how many folks, and especially if you go back to like the Dave Ramsey one, how many folks are in a single income situation and pay off debt, right? Like I need to say that out loud because I think sometimes we think that like you got to have a certain amount of money or everybody's got to be hustling. It is all about how you spend what comes into your house. We have some very good friends. I think they were here for one other thing before, Ty and Talit. They have been a single income family forever, and they have done amazing things. So just saying that to you, to just say like this is a space that even in the single income, you all have absolutely the space and the agency to do this. Because I would say that before you go into entrepreneurial, like streamlining as much have-to-dos in your day-to-day budget is what is going to give you the access to do some of these other things. I was working, I've been a corporate person for a very long time, so we didn't necessarily have to do extra roles and the things. Demetrius, though, did actually was a pastor and educator at one point, so he actually had 2 jobs at one time. And so we used our just day-to-day regular income versus using gigs to get there. But it's great, and honestly, like AI, learning what AI can do to help you create a hustle with very, very, very low overhead, almost non-existent overhead, is probably where I would focus you. Because some of what we get into with entrepreneurial things is you need outgo to get the income, and you ideally want to go to the stuff that needs as little outgo in order to create the income as possible.
How you guys doing? First of all, thank you. I just want to let you know I'm proud of you guys. What you're doing is amazing. It's amazing. So my question is I'm investing, saving, and paying off debt. So would you suggest just, hey, stop paying into my kids' IRA, stop paying into my IRA, and just go full-fledged into just paying off the debt? Or should I kind of try to keep managing both? Or, because I look at it like, man, do I want to stop paying into my IRA right now? So what you say?
Yeah, so the one caveat is We are not financial advisors, so I want to just say that. But I think your question is like, if I were you, if we were in your situation, what would we do? And so I can answer it from that standpoint. I would, in our case, we recognize that we could do this in a couple years and it would have significant lasting impact if we made this change for these couple of years. And so if that's your case, right, if I'm in your shoes and you're like, if I pivot and I put all my focus toward paying off debt, and then after I've paid off debt, I can go even harder on the IRAs and I can go harder on other things, then I would do it. If perhaps a part of our debt was Karla had gone to medical school, for instance, and she's got $250K in student loans, and we've got other credit card debt on top of that, and we're looking at $300,000 in loans, and it's going to take us 6 years, 7 years to do it, then the calculus would be a bit different. So I think I would take all those things into consideration if I were you. What's my timeline horizon? And if I could knock this out in a couple years and then circle back and go really hard on investing, then I might go that way. And at the end of the day, it also comes down to like what's gonna feel best for you. We bought some real estate in 2022, and in hindsight, the absolute best thing that could have happened for any money we had in 2022, just put it in the market. But I know that from hindsight, right? Because the market was like, let's say the Dow was 20,000 at that point. It's 46,000 now. That's hindsight. I can't move forward in the next 4 years with the same assumption that it's gonna double. So I say that to say, make a decision that feels good for you, feels right for you, and then don't let the hindsight impact how you feel about what you did. And then Pastor Wendell, keep us honest on time.
Morning. Question. So I know you said you were in corporate and then pretty much left. So knowing that you had a 401k, what did you do with that money that was in the 401k instead of just letting it
Absolutely, great
sit there
question.
and not do anything?
Yeah, so a 401k can be converted into an IRA. So that's literally what we did was, it's called a rollover. And if you're going to another company, you can roll it into another 401k. But in my case, because I'm not going to someplace that does, I could roll it into an IRA. The way IRAs and 401ks work differently, and ironically, we were just talking about this with our financial planner earlier this week, is they're just taxed different on the back end, right? And neither one of them you can touch before a certain age, right? They have to stay in there until usually like 59 and a half or something along those lines, but they are taxed different. And so that's what you would do with it, is you request a rollover and you roll it into an IRA. And you can do that at Fidelity, at Schwab, and any of these other companies.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and definitely get some, like, connect with the financial advisor that you trust when you roll it over, because I do recall a situation when I was leaving education and I had to roll over. I later found out that I got pushed into, that like my rollover got pushed into some investments that basically were like a boom for the person, like the advisor that pushed me into that, rather than actually being best for me. Like they performed okay, but the fees were pretty high. And so you want to pay attention to what are called expense ratios. That's what's describing what you actually are paying for the performance of that investment. That's really important.
Yeah, one of the things we actually literally just started doing is what we're calling Davis Money Week, where we take time to reset and relook at our finances, right? Like, how well are we setting to the budget? What are any investment things that we want to go back and look at? Our financial advisor does a quarterly report that they send us. Let's go through it that week, find out what questions we have. Let's set up time to talk with them. And so, again, it helps us to say that, like, we are managing our money, right? And right now, especially as we're making some other transitions, we know, like, we have we have been blessed with a lot, so we want to make sure we're stewarding it really well. And so that is what now this Money Week is about. We also are using it to have conversations with our daughter about money, and now she has stock that she has picked that now we can watch and she can see how it's growing. And so really just making it a moment for us all to reset and stay connected to what our money is doing for us. So.
Yeah, it's really important. We've been pushing ourselves because Karla's been working really hard. I've been working really hard at the church. And so we have not been able to pay a lot of attention to what's happening with our money that's invested. And we just have to push ourselves. Like, we're responsible to God for being good stewards over that. And those reports, there's a whole lot of numbers, a whole lot of stuff on it, a lot of stuff we don't understand. We owe it to ourselves to understand that stuff. Because as your money grows to a certain level, like let's say even on $100,000, the market could do 10%, 15%. That's $10,000, $15,000 that investment made this year. Like, that's kind of arrogant for me to feel like I don't have time to pay attention to like 10 to 15,000. If we're talking 500,000 invested, now we're talking at 10%. That's $50,000, right? Like, that's in some school districts, that's like a starting school teacher salary. So we're saying we ain't got enough time to stop and pay attention to like what happened with that 50,000. Did we actually get 50,000 or did we get 40? And if so, why? What should have been done differently? So we've been trying to be a lot more intentional. I want to encourage you guys as well. Invest yourselves into understanding about these very critical things. I think we got time for maybe one more. Okay.
Well, we will be around, I think, around after the next session. So if you do have any other questions that come up, that is what we're here for. Like we have said, God has just been too amazing to us for us to not pay it forward. And so we are just very passionate about this space and ensuring that folks can have all the tools that we know, at least, in order to pour into their journeys. And we know that God will bless it as well. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
All right.